Hello, and welcome to another Edison TV executive interview. I'm Aaron Atkar, healthcare analyst here at Edison. Our guest today is Carlos Buesa, Chief Executive Officer at Oryzon Genomics. Oryzon is a publicly listed clinical stage biopharmaceutical company focused on the development of epigenetic-based therapies, with pipelines in both oncology and focused on CNS disorders. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you, Aaron.
So we're going to keep the focus today on Oryzon's CNS pipeline, which is led by the lead candidate vafidemstat, where the primary targeted indication is aggression/agitation in borderline personality disorder, or BPD. So Carlos, Oryzon's made headway in preparing for its phase 3 program in BPD. Can you provide an update on the current status of the program, including interactions with regulators and the choice of endpoints for phase 3?
Yeah, with pleasure, Aaron. No, yeah, it has been a very long journey since we were publishing the final results of our phase 2 data last year at the ECNP conference in Milan. We have promising data for the audience to remind. I mean, we were missing the primaries in aggression and overall improvement, but we were getting very strong results in secondaries, also in aggression and overall improvement. That, together with a number of other findings of the trial, was really sufficiently promising to go to the agency, and we went to the agency, to the FDA, in an end of phase 2 meeting, where we discussed with them if the data were warrant or were having the merits to proceed to a phase 3. And the truth is that they were very constructive. They are very aware that there is nothing approved in BPD, that there is a strong medical need. People are being treated with off-label antipsychotics. So they were very, very conscious that there is no gold standard in how you measure these patients. So they were examining the whole data package of the phase 2, and they were agreeing with us that the data were deserving the shot to go for a phase 3. So that was a very promising start. Then the conversations continue. We wanted to carve out the indications to aggression because it's there where we see a strongest signal, and they agree with that as well. And finally, of course, the elephant in the room was how we measure these patients, or in other words, what endpoints should we take for this phase 3? Of course, it looks like obvious that if you have got very promising results in a previous trial, you should repeat this endpoint in the next trial. But the agency, cognizant of that, recognizing this, still they said, well, it would be very convenient that you would complement this with clinician rate endpoint that is also providing additional confidence on your STAXI-2 treat anger, which is a patient-rated scale, and was giving us this strong result in the previous phase 2. So we assembled a group of very renowned scientists, psychiatrists in the US, from Stanford, Yale, Albert Einstein, and other colleges. And these people and us, we were basically examining all the FDA comments, and we were going through and preparing a draft of the protocol. So at the same time, we were having additional rounds of iterations of conversations with the FDA. They were requesting us to do some psychometrical studies. We did. They were requesting us to do some qualitative research. We did. So we have been in strong, close contact with the FDA to try to accommodate all their requirements to provide in this protocol that we just submitted in June, this last June, to accommodate all the requirements that they did on this protocol, especially on the endpoints aspect. I mean, endpoints in terms of facial validity, psychometrical robustness, and so on and so forth, had to be convincing for the agency, for the doctors, and for everyone. So I think that we have done a thorough work on that. I think that the outcome is very satisfactory. What we have suggested, I mean, we have submitted now to the agency, is that we are going to complement the primary endpoint Staxi-2 trait anger, which is a patient-rated, with a key secondary endpoint, which is the over-aggression scale modified, which is this OESM is a scale that has been very well validated, is clinician rated. In other studies has shown capacity of measuring pharmacological effects on reducing aggression. And very recently, a number of members of the BPD community have started to use this scale as well. So we are, I think, in a very good position because the studies that were done in principle by Dr. Coccaro, who was the creator of designer of this scale, showed that the psychometrical correlation between OESM and Staxi-2 trait anger is 0.72, which is good because it's sufficiently high to indicate that they are measuring more or less the same things, and it's not that high to say that you are repeating the same observation or the same evaluation. So it's perfectly on the finest point to have this kind of complementarity. So that's where we are right now. We were submitting this trial to the FDA, the protocol. We expect the go, obviously, in due time, probably September, maybe October. And we are very hopeful that this is going to be a significant step forward for the BPD patient community because it has to be reminded that there is nothing approved, but there is nothing on the pipeline. So we are the only company right now with an advanced asset in this disease, which is huge, is an enormous medical need, and also a very substantial commercial opportunity.
So, borderline personality disorder is a condition with no approved drugs. Can you outline why you believe there is such a significant unmet need in this space, and then how vafidemstat's epigenetic mechanism of action aims to address this?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are indications like schizophrenia that they have been there on the common knowledge for more than 100 years, and they are part of our culture, so to speak. There are other personality disorders or other syndromes which are much more recently described and characterized, and therefore, I mean, they are relatively new. However, I mean, when you dig out on the data, you realize that 1.6% to 2.5%, depending on the sources of the population, general population, develops BPD. Of course, not everybody is extreme. As always, you have a Gaussian curve. You have very mild, moderate, mid, severe, and extremely severe people. But I mean, it's a disease which is causing lots of pain. I mean, these people are having lots of interpersonal relationship problems. I mean, there are people who are very suspicious that they are always feeling that they are going to be abandoned. They overreact. They basically ruin their romantic relations. There are people who are not able to get the job, to keep the jobs, to get and to keep the jobs. And there are also people who are very complicated for their families. And this is extremely complicated because additionally to that, it's a condition which shows high levels of agitation and aggression, which many times this agitation and aggression goes autolytic. So they injure themselves, they cut themselves, they bang themselves, and also they kill themselves. I mean, the ratio of suicidal execution in this disease is the highest in any other psychiatric disorder. So the unmet need is there. These people are, I mean, populating the emergency rooms. There are people who are very vocal, very disruptive in the extreme cases. And as I said before, there is nothing approved. I mean, the doctors basically try to cope with these outbursts with these antipsychotics, which have lots of side effects. They mitigate the outbursts for a short period, but people abandon this medication because they get sleepy, they get drowsy, they gain weight, they lost their libido. I mean, it's really not the way that you want to live as a full human being. So the medical need is there. And the reason why I mean some pharmas have been more reluctant to enter into this space was because there was a sort of, I would say, a legend, urban legend, that this disease is particularly difficult or intractable, or these patients are particularly difficult. And I must say that our experience do not agree with that. I mean, we have performed a phase 2b trial in the US and in Europe, and we must say that these patients were not more difficult than schizophrenia or ADHD or autistic patients. They are as difficult or as simple, as easygoing as you want to express, that any other patients from other syndromes or diseases or disorders. So yeah, all in all, we have right now a situation where there is not only an enormous medical need, but I mean there is also an emptiness on the pipeline, and this is placing us on a, as I said before, on a very comfortable competitive landscape.
So, Oryzon recently hosted a key opinion leader event which featured clinicians working sort of directly with BPD patients. So, could you briefly summarize some of the key takeaways from that event?
Well, this event that I invite the audience to hear by themselves, there is an hyperlink in the Horizon webpage that you can basically click and follow it. It was basically an interesting, an important part of the discussion was about the disease itself. So talking about how more and more people are being diagnosed, because this is a condition that is more and more well known by the psychiatrists and the specialists, well described on the DSM-5, and also emphasizing how important was the mitigation of the agitation and aggression on the daily life, because although this disease has these two components, the psychiatric component and the agitation and aggression component, it is true that the agitation and aggression component is also contaminating the psychiatric component, because, of course, if you are having constant fights and constant clash with people around you, I mean, this is something that is going to worsen your perception of yourself. You think, well, I am a bad person because I am having problems with everybody. On the contrary, if you enter in a sort of calm period, I mean, you are performing well, you are starting to feel better, your interactions with the other people are becoming less stressful, and so on and so forth. So there is a component in the aggression, which is a meta component that also spills over the psychiatric component. But what is true is that the agitation and aggression components plays a very important role on the quality of life of these people, on the capacity of getting jobs, on the capacity of keeping the jobs. In fact, we did a qualitative research during the Portico trial, and when we were asking the patients what were the most significant, in their words, what they were the most significant or more cumbersome or more impairing symptoms on their daily life, aggression, irritability, incapability to cope with frustration, outbursts were concepts that they were getting there. And the specialists and the key opinion leader were agreeing on that, were emphasizing this. And the other question is that they wanted to see a drug for this patient that is a drug which has a tolerability profile which is sufficiently good. And it is clear that vafidemstat is having a very good tolerability profile. We have performed several phase 1s, 2, and 2b studies with almost 500 people dosed with this drug, and what we can see is that we don't see weight gain, we don't see loss of libido, we don't see drowsiness. So three of the main components that makes people to abandon their treatments is not there in Buffy. So I think that what it was also a bit the message from the key opinion leaders was that with this, you would expect that an adherence to the treatment would be sufficiently good to let the drug to speak, no? To let the drug speak. And I think that the other aspect that was mentioned is that this epigenetic mechanism of action, which is controlling the expression of genes involved on the stress management on the prefrontal cortex, can work in not only in BPD, can work in other indications. And they were also discussing the need in other indications like autistic spectrum disorder and other things. So it was a very comprehensive view of the disease, a bit of the data that we have seen in the Portico trial. Not too much discussion about the protocol that we have submitted to the FDA, but it was very rich on these other aspects.
So you've touched upon it just there a little bit, but we understand that by targeting agitation and aggression, this may open the doors to address other neurological conditions. So can you talk to us just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, as I was saying just a minute ago, I mean, it is something which is transversal to many indications. It's not only neuropsychiatry. I mean, we know that it's very important. Aggression is very important in schizophrenia, in ADHD, in autism, in borderline personality disorders, but also in Alzheimer's and also in Parkinson's disease. So, and again, this aggression is many times triggered not by an aggressive behavior, but a misjudgment of the stressful signals that the patient receives from the outer world. So I think that in the sense that our mechanism of action is basically resetting the immediate early genes on the prefrontal cortex to make a more a refreshed connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and other aspects and other regions involved on the stress response. I think that is something that can certainly merit to be tested. It has to be mentioned that we did a very small preliminary phase 2A trial with Alzheimer's, and we saw some interesting signals there of reducing of aggression. So yeah, I mean, indeed, autism, aggression, Alzheimer's, aggression are fields where we could eventually continue the exploration of vafidemstat in these domains.
Fantastic. So before we wrap up, just for investors and prospective investors, could you briefly summarize the key catalysts and milestones to watch out for that are upcoming for Oryzon?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the more important one is the FDA response that we expect by September, October to get the go for the phase 3 trial. I didn't mention, but we were saying before that in previous releases that we are also running a very interesting trial in schizophrenia. This trial was initially constrained to Spain only because of financial constraints of the company. The company got $50 million on the last months. And because of that, we have immediately expanded the trial to Europe. So we have also revisited with the biostatisticians. We think that with 88 patients, we will be having sufficiently alpha power to see differences on the negative symptoms, which is the primary endpoint. But we are also going to measure, of course, positive symptoms. So it's going to be also very informative in this field. And this is a trial that we are accelerating, and we expect to be able to read in 2027. So 1 year and a half from now. We are right now already designing a phase 2 trial in aggression in autism. with idiopathic autistic patients, but also enriched with Phelan-McDermid patients. So we are very interested on seeing the overall response in the idiopathic population, but also on specifically genetically defined populations. So these are the three basic pillars for the CNS. But I would like to remind the audience that Oryzon has another pillar, which is the oncology. Is a pillar, oncology and hematology is a pillar that we expect to our license at some time point, or and to monetize this to get the resources on the CNS. But we are going to present very promising, very positive data, I think, in the next ASH from the several studies that we are performing, either sponsored by the company or either through the CREADA agreement with the NCI NIH in the US, and also some investigator-initiated studies. So we are having also some good news there. We have submitted to the EMA a new trial in sickle cell disease, where we think that our other asset may play a fundamental role. I mean, it's well described molecularly speaking, that LSD1 inhibition basically is able to disrupt the two main repressor complexes for the expression of fetal hemoglobin, and this is going to be very interesting as well. So yeah, plenty of catalysts coming on the next months or quarters. So I think that the investors should be tuned.
Excellent. One more question, if I may, Carlos. We're seeing a resurgence of interest in the CNS space across the healthcare sector. Now, given that you're working at the forefront of the field, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on what's driving this current trend?
Well, I think that what is driving this current trend is the realization that was particularly clear after COVID, that we are a society with lots of mental health issues, problems, that we need to, I mean, it's not to stigmatize anyone, of course, but we need to address those with new mechanism of action, with new drugs. And this is a clear need, and this is, of course, a very interesting market. We have seen transactions which have been triggering an interest, the acquisition of the Cerebrals by AbbVie. We saw the recent acquisition from BMS, from Karuna. But basically, also the fact that we have seen approvals like Aplita for major depressive disorder, Simbravo for migraine-associated mood disruption, the postpartum depression molecule Susvay. So we have seen some approvals, and of course also in Alzheimer's. I think the big, although it is clear that aducanumab and Leqembi probably are not going to provide what the community is expecting, has been a sparking event to renew the mood and to have additional interest. I think that it is interesting to see what happens with the muscarinic circuitry theory. I mean, to be fully candid, we were not expecting the failure of AbbVie in that regard, because the molecule and the mechanism of action was looking really, really, really nice and solid. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen with MAPLights, the ML007, which is going to test. Is a panagonist from the muscarinic. So we'll see what happens with this, because I think that it was surprising. I mean, there are other aspects which are also promising. No, the orexin modulation is something that has been discussed to be able to control depression. So that would be also very interesting, and of course the psychoplastogens, no, This is another very complicated field, regulatory speaking, and in terms of dosage and in terms of, I mean, there are many things to be solved, but certainly is a field which deserves to be continued. And I would like to end with the last word about epigenetics. So we think that we are right now probably the only company developing an histone methylase, an histone modifier. Okay, but there are also other companies developing HDAC5 selective inhibitors. So there are a number of attempts on coming back to epigenetics because, as you and the audience for sure knows, when there is studies trying to look on the more implicated genes in different neurodegenerative disorders and psychiatric disorders, in all these GWAS studies, there is always a very strong epigenetic component. We know that the epigenetic component is on the basis of the etiology of these diseases. We still want to find the holy grail, which is going to be the epigenetic leverage to modify some of these diseases. So I think it's a fantastic field. It's certainly a field to be in. And we have seen M&A, we have seen deals. So I think that, yeah, we have up and downs, of course, like any other field, because there are also failures, like the AbbVie that we commented, which was very unfortunate. But yeah, I think that we are in a very interesting moment on this indication, on this field right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Carlos, for sharing your thoughts and insights. It's certainly an exciting time ahead for Oryzon and the field. So if our audience would like to learn more about Oryzon, please refer to edisongroup.com or the company's website. Carlos, thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure as always.